I utterly destroyed my in-laws' reputation with 3 screenshots sent to the entire family chat. One minute, they were the respected pillars of the community, lauded for their supposed charity work. The next, they were exposed frauds, their perfect lives imploding in real time via WhatsApp notifications. And the fuse for that explosion? It was lit months earlier, on Christmas morning, by a cheap, broken superhero toy they gave to my 5-year-old son. The wrapping paper lay in festive shreds around Leo's feet. His initial excitement, that pure, unadulterated Christmas morning joy, had vanished. Instead, his face was a mask of confusion, his small hand holding up a plastic action figure. Its arm was snapped clean off, the jagged edge of cheap plastic stark against the bright colors. The useless limb lay abandoned in the bottom of the box. A suffocating silence fell over my in-laws' immaculate living room. You know the kind of house, everything beige, everything perfect, everything cold. It always felt like breathing too loudly might leave a smudge. Brenda, my mother-in-law, performed a little gasp, her hands fluttering like startled birds near her pearls. Oh, my goodness. Look at that. How dreadful. It must have gotten damaged in transit. Her voice was high and airy, completely devoid of genuine concern. My father-in-law, Richard, ever the master of deflection, cleared his throat. His tie was perfectly knotted, not a hair out of place. Rotten luck, Leo, just rotten luck. Must be shoddy manufacturing these days. He glanced around the room, not at his grandson, but at the other relatives, gauging their reactions, managing the optics even now. But standing there, watching my son's lower lip tremble as he blinked back tears, it didn't feel like bad luck. It felt pointed. It felt dismissive. The toy wasn't just broken. It felt cheap, like something grabbed from a bargain bin without a second thought. An afterthought gift for an afterthought grandson. In that moment, staring at that fractured piece of plastic, a cold dread washed over me. This wasn't just about a disappointing present. This was a glimpse behind the curtain, a crack in the flawless, charitable facade they presented to the world. That broken toy felt symbolic, and I had no idea just how deeply symbolic it truly was, or that it would lead me down a path to uncovering a lie so profound it would tear the family apart. My name is Sarah. Before that Christmas, life was comfortably chaotic, in the way life often is with a young child. I'm a graphic designer, working from the controlled mess of my home office, which lets me juggle deadlines and school runs. My husband, Tom, is a software engineer, a good man, steady, kind, maybe a little too inclined to avoid conflict, especially with his parents. We lived in a cozy rented house, the kind with slightly creaky floorboards and a garden Leo loved to get muddy in. We weren't wealthy, not like Brenda and Richard, but we were happy. Our weekends were filled with park visits, messy pancake breakfasts, and family movie nights. It was real. It was ours. Tom's parents, Brenda and Richard Davison, existed in a different orbit. Their house, in the town's most affluent neighborhood, was less a home and more a showroom. Spotless, ordered, smelling vaguely of potpourri and judgment. They were prominent figures locally, celebrated for their tireless community involvement and, most notably, their very own charity venture, Community Hands. Everyone seemed to adore them. "Oh, the Davisons do so much good," was the common refrain. Such generous, dedicated people. I really did, to connect with them, mostly for Tom's sake. He saw them through the loving haze of childhood memory, strong, infallible, generous. But I always felt off balance around them. Brenda's compliments felt like carefully wrapped criticisms. "That's a unique dress, Sarah. Very bold." Her smile was a perfectly painted mask that never quite reached her eyes. Richard dispensed advice that always sounded like commands, delivered with an air of absolute authority, particularly regarding finances or career choices, areas where he clearly felt I fell short. Our life, my freelance career, our less-than-showroom house, Leo's occasional scraped knee, seemed to be constant, subtle sources of disapproval. It was veiled, of course, behind tight smiles and pronouncements about maintaining standards or the importance of appearances. Their own appearance was paramount. So I played the game. I brought homemade desserts to their stiff dinner parties, listened patiently while Richard explained investment strategies I hadn't asked for, and praised Brenda's sterile decor. I told myself their obsession with image was just their way, a generational quirk. The faint, persistent feeling of unease whenever I was in their presence? That was just me being sensitive, I reasoned. Our life was good. Why make waves over disapproving in-laws? I focused on Tom and Leo, on our warm little bubble. I didn't realize their carefully constructed world was built on foundations so rotten that Christmas morning was about to expose the first, jarring crack. That Christmas morning radiated tension beneath a veneer of forced cheer. We arrived precisely at the appointed time. Brenda considered tardiness a moral failing, arms laden with gifts we'd spent weeks choosing. Their house felt less festive, more like a stage set. Ornaments hung with geometric precision on a tree that looked suspiciously perfect. The air hummed with the effort of it all. Brenda glided around with trays of tiny, perfect appetizers, her smile fixed. Richard pontificated by the fireplace about tax loopholes and his golf handicap. Other family members were there. Tom's sister Lisa, her husband Mark, a couple of aunts, uncles, cousins. The conversation was a minefield of safe topics, everyone careful not to spill, not to smudge, not to disrupt Brenda's perfect tableau. I stuck close to Leo, trying to make him feel comfortable in the strangely sterile environment. Then came the gift ceremony. Brenda and Richard presided from their matching wingback chairs, like royalty bestowing favors. Lisa and Mark got cashmere scarves. The cousins received gift cards to upscale boutiques. Finally, it was Leo's turn. Brenda presented him with a brightly wrapped package, her voice hitting that overly sweet note that always set my teeth on edge. "And this is from Grandma and Grandpa," she sang out. Leo's eyes widened. The box clearly depicted the Astro Avenger, superhero he was currently obsessed with. He ripped into the paper with pure, 5-year-old enthusiasm, his little fingers scrambling at the tape. And then the ripping stopped. The excited chatter died on his lips. He just stared into the box. I felt a prickle of unease and leaned closer. My stomach plummeted. The Astro Avenger figure inside wasn't the sturdy, well-made version from the commercials. It was a cheap, flimsy imitation. And its arm was snapped clean off, lying loose in the plastic shell. The break was jagged, the plastic brittle. It looked like it had come from a dollar store reject bin. "Oh dear," Brenda trilled again, her performance of surprise utterly unconvincing. "How very unfortunate. They make these things so poorly nowadays, don't they?" Richard chimed in smoothly. "Not to worry, Leo. A spot of glue should fix that right up." He didn't meet Leo's gaze, his eyes scanning the room instead, assessing the damage, not to the toy, but to the moment, to their image. Leo looked up at me, his big brown eyes swimming with tears. "Mommy," he whispered, his voice thick with disappointment. "It's broken." My own smile felt like cracking porcelain. I knelt beside him, wrapping an arm around his small, trembling shoulders. "It's okay, sweetie," I murmured, but a hot tide of anger was rising in my chest. It wasn't just the brokenness. It was the insult of it. The utter lack of care. They hadn't even bothered to check it before wrapping it. Compared to the obviously expensive gifts given just moments before, it felt like a deliberate slight. Trying to keep my voice level, I asked, "Perhaps we could exchange it? Do you remember where you bought it?" Brenda waved a dismissive hand, already turning away. "Oh, goodness knows, dear. Picked it up ages ago, somewhere or other. The receipt is long gone, I'm sure." Her eyes darted away, refusing to meet mine. A blatant lie, delivered with practiced ease. Later, driving home, the broken toy sitting accusingly on the back seat. Tom tried to smooth it over. Mom was probably just rushed, Sarah. Don't make a big deal out of it. But I couldn't shake the feeling. It wasn't rushed. It felt calculated somehow. It felt like a reflection of their true priorities, their true feelings about us. We weren't important enough for a decent gift. Leo wasn't important enough. The unease I'd always felt around them began to solidify into something colder, sharper. Suspicion. What else were they being careless or even dishonest about? That broken piece of plastic felt like a warning. The weeks following that Christmas were frosted with a new layer of awkwardness. I couldn't forget the broken toy, or the dismissive way Brenda and Richard had brushed off Leo's disappointment. It replayed in my mind, coloring every interaction. Tom, ever the peacekeeper, urged me to let it go. They're just not great gift givers, Sarah. They're busy with their charity work. He kept making excuses. Maybe it really did break in transit. Maybe they genuinely forgot where they bought it. But my gut screamed otherwise. Their behavior shifted subtly, too. Brenda's passive aggression sharpened. Comments about our finances became more frequent. Oh, Sarah, another new gadget for Leo? We always taught Tom the importance of saving for a rainy day. This, while she sported a brand new designer watch I knew cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. Or she'd say things like, working from home must offer such freedom. Though Richard always says a structured environment builds better character. Each remark was a tiny, perfectly aimed dart. Richard, meanwhile, intensified his unsolicited financial lectures. He'd corner Tom or me, pontificating about investment portfolios and tax shelters. You really need to be more aggressive with your savings, Tom. Brenda and I built our nest egg through discipline. Or, Sarah, have you considered scaling up your design business? There's real money to be made if you structure it properly. It always carried that undercurrent of judgment, implying our choices were inherently inferior. And woven through it all, the constant, almost suffocating mentions of community hands. They talked incessantly about fundraising goals, donation drives, and the desperate need in the community. They painted themselves as tireless saviors. Yet, their descriptions of the actual help provided remained frustratingly vague. We assisted several families with utility bills this month, Brenda would announce proudly. But which families? How much assistance? Details were always scarce. Their social media became a curated feed of their supposed benevolence. Photos of them beaming beside stacks of canned goods, never a hair out of place. Pictures of them presenting oversized checks, payable to nebulous causes like Community Enrichment Fund. Posts urging followers to donate to Community Hands via a link that led to a bare-bones website, just stock photos, vague promises, and a PayPal button linked directly to Brenda's personal-sounding email address. No mission statement specifics, no financial transparency, no board of directors listed. Nothing a legitimate charity would have. One evening, the phone rang. It was Brenda, her voice radiating urgency. Sarah, darling, we're in the midst of a major push for the Spring Forward Fund for Community Hands. Richard was just saying how wonderful it would be if the family could lead by example. We were hoping you and Tom might see your way clear to contributing, say, $1,000? It would make such a statement. $1,000? My jaw nearly hit the floor. That was a huge sum for us. Brenda, I stammered, that's very generous of you to think of us, but things are extremely tight right now. We couldn't possibly manage that much. The warmth in her voice evaporated instantly, leaving an icy chill. Oh, she said flatly. I see. Well, naturally do what you must. It's just, Richard felt quite strongly about family solidarity on this. Appearances matter, you understand. The implication was clear. Our lack of contribution reflected poorly on them. After I hung up, frustration boiled over. Tom, this is getting ridiculous, I exclaimed. $1,000? After they gave Leo that piece of junk? They talk constantly about helping the needy, but their actions don't match. And this community hands, it feels off. Where is all this money actually going? Why isn't it properly registered? Doesn't any of this strike you as weird? Tom looked deeply uncomfortable. He paced the living room. Sarah, please. They're my parents. They wouldn't steal. Maybe they're just bad at paperwork. Maybe the $1,000 was just Mom getting carried away. Or maybe, I said quietly, the suspicion solidifying into conviction, maybe they're not who we think they are. Maybe that broken toy wasn't carelessness. Maybe it was a reflection of where their priorities truly lie. The image of the snapped plastic arm, Brenda's dismissive wave, Richard's smug pronouncements, the demand for money. It all started swirling together into an ugly picture. Something was fundamentally wrong here. And I realized, with a sinking feeling, that I couldn't rely on Tom to see it. If I wanted answers, I would have to find them myself. The unease had transformed into a quiet, burning determination. The suspicion became an obsession, a puzzle I felt compelled to solve. The gleaming facade of Brenda and Richard's life, their lauded charity work, it felt increasingly hollow. I needed proof, something concrete to either confirm my fears or, hopefully, dispel them. My first stop was the internet, late at night, bathed in the blue glow of my monitor. I searched again for Community Hands Charity, this time digging deeper. I scoured state databases for registered nonprofits. Nothing. I checked federal IRS databases for tax-exempt organizations. Nothing. I looked for any news coverage beyond society page mentions of the Davisons attending events. Zero articles about Community Hands actually doing anything tangible. No shelter openings, no specific program launches, nothing. The only online presence was that amateurish website and their social media page, filled with staged photos and those vague appeals for donations leading straight to Brenda's PayPal-linked email. It wasn't just disorganized. It felt deliberately opaque. A shiver went down my spine. Could they really be running a scam? A few weeks later, another mandatory family dinner. The air in their pristine dining room felt thicker than usual. I found myself watching their every move, listening intently to every word. During a lull in conversation, I brought up a local news story about funding cuts to the town's food bank. It's such a shame, I said, directing my gaze at Brenda. Especially with the need being so high. Does Community Hands partner with them at all? Brenda gave a tight, brittle smile. We find it's more effective to manage our resources directly, Sarah. Cutting out the middleman ensures the funds go precisely where they're needed most. She quickly changed the subject to her upcoming garden party. Another deflection. The final straw came unexpectedly. I overheard Richard on the phone in his study, the door slightly ajar. His voice was low, conspiratorial. No, absolutely not through the main account, he was saying. Use the Community Hands transfer for the deposit. Less traceable that way. Yes, the cruise line. Just book it. My blood ran cold. A cruise? Paid for via the charity account? The same account they were pressuring us to donate $1,000 to? The audacity was breathtaking. That night, I laid it all out for Tom again. The lack of registration. The vague website. Brenda's evasiveness. The overheard phone call about the cruise. Tom, I know something is wrong, I pleaded. This isn't just poor organization. This is deceit. They are using donated money for themselves. That cruise Richard was booking? I guarantee you it's being funded by Community Hands. He looked shattered. He hated conflict, hated thinking ill of his parents. Sarah, are you sure? Mishearing things, maybe there's another explanation. What explanation, Tom? I countered, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. That they run an unregistered charity out of their personal PayPal? That they use its funds, meant for the needy, to book luxury cruises? That they gave their own grandson a broken toy because they're too cheap or too focused on funding their lifestyle? Open your eyes. He flinched. Accusing them of this, it could destroy everything, Sarah. Our relationship with them, the whole family, and what if it's true? I shot back, quieter this time, but firm. What if they're exploiting people's goodwill? What if Aunt Carol, or Uncle Mark, or countless others are giving money they can't afford, thinking it's helping people, when it's really just funding Brenda's handbags and Richard's golf trips? Doesn't that matter more? He didn't answer, just stared blankly ahead. The silence hung heavy between us. I knew then, definitively, that I was alone in this quest. Confronting them without irrefutable proof would be career suicide within the family. They'd paint me as a jealous, vindictive troublemaker. I needed undeniable evidence. The tension was becoming unbearable, a constant knot in my stomach. Every interaction with them felt like walking through a minefield. But the image of that cruise, funded by deception, hardened my resolve. I would find the proof. Somehow. The breakthrough arrived disguised as an olive branch. Brenda called one morning, her voice dripping with uncharacteristic sweetness. "Sarah, dear, you are just so wonderfully organized, and heavens, my office is simply overflowing with paperwork, especially all the community hands files. Richard keeps nagging me to sort it out." A delicate pause. "I was wondering if you had a spare hour or two this week, could you possibly lend your brilliant skills to an old woman drowning in clutter? I'd be eternally grateful." My internal sirens blared. Brenda, asking me, the daughter-in-law she subtly denigrated, for help? With her precious charity paperwork? It screamed trap. Was she testing my loyalty? Trying to lull me into a false sense of security? But then, another thought sparked. What if this wasn't a trap, but an opportunity? What if, amidst the clutter she claimed to be drowning in, lay the very evidence I needed? The risk was enormous, but the potential reward it was too significant to ignore. "Why, Brenda, I'd be happy to help out," I replied, injecting warmth I didn't feel into my voice. "How about Thursday afternoon? I should be free then." "Perfect," she chirped, sounding genuinely pleased, which somehow made me even more suspicious. "Richard has his golf game then, so it'll be just us girls catching up while we conquer the chaos." Thursday afternoon found me standing on their polished doorstep, my stomach doing nervous flips. Brenda ushered me in, all smiles and solicitous offers of coffee. The home office was indeed chaotic, but in a curated way. Stacks of unimportant mail and catalogs piled high, perhaps to enhance the illusion of being overwhelmed. Mahogany desk, leather chair, the faint scent of expensive air freshener battling dust. "See." Brenda sighed dramatically, gesturing at the piles. "An absolute nightmare. Donation receipts to file, bills to sort. I hardly know where to begin. Perhaps you could tackle that pile near the shredder?" She wanted me sorting papers near the shredder? Interesting. "Of course, Brenda," I said, adopting my most helpful demeanor. "Let's dive in. Maybe start by separating personal items from the community hand stuff." For the next hour, I diligently sorted, while Brenda mostly hovered, made distracting small talk, and took a lengthy phone call in the hallway, discussing catering options for her garden party. I created neat piles. Junk mail, actual household bills, and a surprisingly small pile of what looked like legitimate charity correspondence, mostly generic appeal letters. And then I saw them. Partially hidden beneath a glossy brochure for a Mediterranean cruise and a Jade crew catalog were several folded bank statements. My heart gave a painful lurch. I glanced towards the hallway. Brenda was still deep in her phone call. With trembling fingers, I eased the statements out. There were 3 of them, covering the last quarter. The account name printed boldly at the top wasn't theirs. It read, "Community Hands Fund." My breath hitched. I unfolded the pages, my eyes scanning rapidly. Deposits flowed in small amounts consistent with online donations, a few larger checks here and there. But the withdrawals painted a sickening picture. Tiny, almost negligible amounts went to actual charitable causes, $100 to a food pantry, $50 to a generic community outreach. But the vast majority of the outgoing funds were hemorrhaging elsewhere. Regular, substantial transfers, thousands each month, straight into Brenda and Richard's personal joint bank account, labeled with bland descriptions like admin fee reimbursement or operating costs. And the direct debits from the community hands account itself? Charges from exclusive restaurants Richard boasted about. Payments to the luxury department store where Brenda bought her signature silk scarves. A hefty charge clearly labeled Regal Cruises Deposit, matching the brochure right beside it. Even Richard's annual country club membership dues. It wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping. It wasn't incompetence. It was calculated, systematic theft. They were running community hands as their personal piggy bank, diverting funds meant for people in need to bankroll their lavish, image-obsessed lifestyle. Suddenly, the broken toy incident snapped into sharp, brutal clarity. It wasn't just carelessness. It was a direct consequence of their staggering selfishness. Why waste money on a decent gift for Leo when that same money could fund a fancy dinner or go towards a cruise deposit? Their disregard for their grandson was just a small symptom of their utter disregard for everyone but themselves. Brenda ended her call and swept back into the office, beaming. "Making headway, dear? You're an angel." My hands were surprisingly steady as I slipped the statements back into the pile, careful to place them exactly as I'd found them. My heart was pounding, not with fear anymore, but with a cold, clarifying rage. "Absolutely, Brenda," I said, my voice even. "Just getting these financials organized for you." I had it. The smoking gun. Undeniable proof, printed in black and white. They thought I was just the quiet, easily intimidated daughter-in-law. They had no idea I now held the power to detonate their perfectly constructed world. The game hadn't just changed. It was about to end. And I knew exactly how I was going to deliver the checkmate. I let the cold anger simmer for 2 days, using it to fuel my planning. A face-to-face confrontation was out. Too messy. It would allow Brenda to deploy tears, Richard to bluster and deny, giving them control of the narrative. No, this needed precision. It needed to be irrefutable, public within their sphere, and utterly devastating to the image they prized above all else. The perfect weapon? The family WhatsApp group. The Davison Dispatch, Brenda had christened it, their primary channel for broadcasting curated family highlights, vacation photos, and, naturally, constant reminders of their selfless dedication to community hands. It included everyone who mattered to them. Tom's sister Lisa and her husband, aunts, uncles, cousins, about 15 people whose respect Brenda and Richard cultivated meticulously. Exposing them there would be instantaneous and inescapable. Carefully, methodically, I prepared my ammunition. I took clear photos of the crucial sections of the bank statements, the account name, the large transfers to their personal account marked admin fees, the damning debits for the cruise line, the golf club, the luxury stores. I blurred account numbers but left dates, descriptions, and amounts starkly visible. I took screenshots, the failed searches on official charity registration sites, the Primitive Community Hands website with its direct link to Brenda's personal PayPal email. I arranged the evidence like a digital prosecutor building an airtight case. Saturday evening. The timing felt right. People would be relaxed, scrolling through their phones. Leo was happily building a Lego tower with Tom in the living room. Tom knew I was deeply upset with his parents, but he didn't know the full extent of what I'd found, nor the specifics of my plan. This first salvo had to be mine alone. I opened WhatsApp. Aunt Carol had just shared a picture of her prize-winning roses. The calm before the storm. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my pulse thrumming in my ears. I typed, keeping the tone deliberately calm and factual. "Hi everyone, hope you're all enjoying the weekend." A few thumbs-up emojis appeared. Brenda sent a cheerful flower symbol. Oblivious. I took a deep breath. Time to light the fuse. I'm writing this because I've recently discovered some deeply concerning information that I feel obligated to share, particularly as it relates to something many of us have supported, financially or otherwise. The chat went still. I could almost feel the collective intake of breath across the miles. I'm referring to community hands. I continued. For some time now, certain things haven't sat right with me, starting with smaller incidents, like the cheap, broken toy gifted to Leo last Christmas, which, in retrospect, feels sadly symbolic. The typing indicator next to Brenda's name flickered on, then off again. Richard's did the same. They were sensing danger. This unease prompted me to do some research. I typed, letting the words hang there for a second. Firstly, I confirmed that Community Hands possesses no official standing as a registered nonprofit charity, either at the state or federal level. There is no record of its legitimacy. I attached the screenshot of the empty search results from the official databases. A single question mark appeared from Lisa. The hook was set. I pressed on, laying out the damning evidence piece by piece. Furthermore, I recently had the opportunity to view financial records associated with the Community Hands Fund bank account. I kept the, how vague, protecting myself. While I won't share the complete documents out of respect for privacy protocols, the pattern of expenditure is alarming and speaks for itself. I uploaded the carefully selected photos of the statement excerpts, the transfer descriptions, the luxury debits, the cruise payment. As you can plainly see, I wrote, while token amounts were occasionally dispersed to charitable causes, the vast majority of funds donated, potentially including contributions from some of you in this chat, were systematically transferred to Brenda and Richard's personal bank account under vague headings like admin fees and operating cost reimbursement. Moreover, the charity account itself was used directly for significant personal expenditures, high-end retail purchases, expensive dining, country club dues, and, yes, a deposit for a luxury cruise. The digital dam broke. Brenda, Sarah, how dare you post such lies? This is slander. Those are faked documents, you malicious girl. Richard, this is an outrageous and baseless attack. Community Hands is run with the utmost integrity. Sarah, you have fabricated this narrative out of jealousy. Retract this immediately. Lisa, Mom? Dad? What is going on? Are these real? Aunt Carol, Brenda, that cruise you told me about paid for by donations? Uncle Mark, Richard, I donated $1,000 for that Spring Forward Fund. Was that for your cruise? Cousin James, holy crap. My fingers flew, countering their panicked denials with cold facts. They aren't fake, Brenda. And I didn't fabricate anything. I saw them while trying to help you organize the very real mess in your office. Perhaps if you handled donated funds with more care than you handle your paperwork or your grandson's Christmas gifts, this wouldn't be happening. I added the final twist of the knife. Instead of outrage and denial, Brenda and Richard, perhaps you could provide this family with proof of Community Hands official registration or bank statements showing substantial charitable disbursements that somehow weren't visible on the ones I saw. Explain the thousands in admin fees transferred directly to yourselves. Brenda unleashed a torrent of furious, typo-ridden messages, accusing me of trying to destroy the family, calling me ungrateful, jealous. Richard attempted a more measured tone, pleading for a private, rational discussion, but the plea sounded hollow, desperate. It was too late. Their frantic denials only made them look more guilty. The evidence was laid bare for everyone to see. The carefully polished image of the philanthropic Davisons shattered instantly, publicly, humiliatingly, within the very circle whose admiration they craved most. Shocked silence from some, horrified questions from others, raw anger from those who felt personally duped. Lisa typed again, her words ice cold. Mom.
Dad.
You need to explain this.
Now.
Aunt Carol simply wrote, I feel sick. Brenda and Richard went silent. Utterly silent. The accusations hung there unanswered in the digital space. I closed WhatsApp, my body finally registering the adrenaline crash. My hands were shaking, but a profound, almost grim sense of satisfaction washed over me. The truth was out. The reckoning had begun. The fallout was immediate and brutal. My phone lit up, not with calls from Brenda or Richard, but from a stunned and furious Lisa demanding every last detail. Aunt Carol called, sobbing, expressing shame for being fooled and anger over the money she'd donated. Uncle Mark was livid, talking about demanding his money back, though I doubted he'd go through with the legal hassle. Tom found me sitting in the quiet kitchen, staring at my phone. He looked pale, having seen the explosion in the family chat. "Sarah?" he started, his voice thick with disbelief and pain. I didn't argue or defend. I simply showed him the photos on my phone, quietly explaining how I'd found the statements in his mother's office. Seeing the cold, hard proof, the transfers, the luxury expenses paid from the charity account, seemed to break something in him. The denial crumbled. He sank onto a kitchen chair, head in his hands. "All this time," he murmured, "they were stealing." It was a devastating realization for him, but seeing the undeniable truth forged a new understanding between us. He knew I hadn't acted out of spite, but because the deception was too profound to ignore. Our bond felt stronger, anchored in harsh reality. Brenda and Richard scrambled, attempting damage control. They called relatives individually, spinning elaborate tales of misunderstandings, blaming phantom accountants, accusing me of forgery and mental instability. But the screenshots were too damning, the pattern too clear. Their frantic efforts only dug the hole deeper. The trust, once implicitly given, was irrevocably shattered. The family inevitably fractured. Holidays became minefields of awkward avoidance. Brenda and Richard found themselves isolated, their calls often going unanswered, their invitations politely declined. The whispers spread beyond the family, tarnishing their precious community's standing. People they'd cultivated for years suddenly grew distant. The Community Hands website vanished without a trace, its social media page deleted. Whether anyone pursued legal action, I don't know. Perhaps the embarrassment and the family ties prevented it. But their social currency, the reputation they valued above all else, was bankrupt. For people defined by appearances, it was a fate worse than fines. Our lives, paradoxically, became calmer. Free from the oppressive weight of their expectations and judgments, we could finally breathe. The constant low-level anxiety I'd felt around them dissipated. Tom grieved for the idealized parents he thought he had, but there was also relief in no longer having to navigate their passive aggression and manipulations. We focused inward on our little family, on teaching Leo about honesty, real honesty, not the performative kind. Sometimes I think back to that broken toy. Such a small thing, really. A piece of cheap plastic. But it was the loose thread that, when pulled, unraveled an entire tapestry of lies. Exposing Brenda and Richard wasn't just about revenge for personal slights or a child's disappointment. It was about accountability. It was about dragging an ugly truth into the light. There's a quiet, almost serene satisfaction in knowing their empire of deceit crumbled not in a shouting match, but under the quiet weight of undeniable facts, delivered precisely where it would hurt them most, in front of the audience they desperately needed to impress. We live more simply now, more authentically. And sometimes, the most profound revenge isn't loud and fiery. It's the quiet peace that comes after the truth is finally set free.